Chapter 5. The Fateful Prophecy. The sun beat down on the training grounds of Halicarnassus, casting no shadow as Artemisia and Kairos clashed swords under the watchful eye of their trainer, Kimon. Normally, the rhythm of combat was like second nature to Artemisia. Each strike, parry, and counter woven into a seamless dance. But today, her movements were sluggish, her focus fragmented. The memory of the conversation she had overheard in Athens played on a loop in her mind, pulling her attention away from the present. Kimon's voice sliced through the air like a whip. "Focus, Artemisia. You're leaving yourself wide open. Again." Artemisia gritted her teeth, tightening her grip on her sword. She knew Kimon was right. She was distracted, but she couldn't help it. The words of Cleisthenes echoed in her thoughts. His sly suggestions to her father about her future, about marriage, heirs, and alliances, unsettling her more than she cared to admit. Every time she tried to push the thoughts aside, they returned, gnawing at her resolve. Across from her, Kairos wasn't faring much better. His strikes were erratic, lacking their usual precision. His mind was clearly elsewhere, and Artemisia knew exactly where it was. The siege on Naxos had begun, and though they were far from the battle, the news had reached Halicarnassus quickly. Kairos had been on edge ever since, his thoughts consumed with worry for his friend Themistocles, who was now in the thick of the fighting. "Again!" Kimon barked, his patience wearing thin. He strode over to the two of them, his eyes blazing with frustration. "You both call yourselves warriors. You're fighting like children today. If you let distractions control you, you'll be dead on the battlefield before you can even draw your sword." Kairos glared at the ground, his jaw clenched. "We're not children," he muttered under his breath. "Then prove it," Kimon snapped. "Whatever is on your minds, you need to set it aside. Out there," he gestured toward the sea. "No one cares about your distractions. All that matters is surviving." Artemisia and Kairos exchanged a glance, both feeling the weight of Kimon's words. He was right, of course. They had trained their whole lives for battle, and they couldn't afford to falter now. But it was easier said than done. Seeing that his words had little effect, Kimon switched tactics. He decided that if words couldn't reach them, harsher methods would. He ordered them into a grueling series of drills, pushing their bodies to the limit. Sweat poured down their faces, and their muscles burned with exhaustion. But still, Kimon pressed on. "You think your enemies will go easy on you because you're tired," he growled. "This is nothing compared to what you'll face out there. Now move." For hours they trained under the relentless sun, their bodies and minds pushed to the breaking point. But even as the fatigue set in, the distractions lingered. Artemisia could see the frustration in Kairos's eyes, and she knew he could see the same in hers. When the session finally ended, Kimon dismissed them with a curt nod, clearly unsatisfied with their performance. As they trudged back to the palace, Kairos broke the silence. "I wish I were in Naxos," he muttered, his voice low but filled with emotion. "I should be there, fighting alongside Themistocles, not stuck here." Artemisia glanced at him, her heart heavy with sympathy. "You know you can't, Kairos. Your place is here. Besides, the situation in Naxos is complicated. We don't know how it will play out." Kairos clenched his fists, frustration etched on his face. "And that's exactly why I should be there. I can't just sit here and do nothing while our friends are risking their lives." Artemisia didn't know how to comfort him. She understood his frustration all too well. They were both caught in a web of uncertainty, their fates tied to decisions beyond their control. And then there was her father, King Lygdamis. She had yet to confront him about what she had overheard in Athens, and it gnawed at her every day. She had vowed to speak to him, but the right moment had never presented itself. Now she wondered if her father was avoiding her on purpose. As they approached the palace, Artemisia made a decision. She couldn't put it off any longer. She had to confront her father and demand answers. But as she strode through the corridors, her resolve faltered when she nearly collided with someone she hadn't expected to see. The seer. He was an ancient man, his back hunched with the weight of years, his eyes clouded with the fog of time. His skin was weathered like old parchment, and his robes hung loosely around his thin frame. His hair, once dark, had turned to wisps of silver, and his voice was a rasp, like dry leaves rustling in the wind. They called him Myron, though few dared speak his name openly. Artemisia had never liked Myron. There was something about him that unnerved her, a darkness that lingered beneath his words, as if he knew too much, both of the past and the future. But he was her father's trusted advisor, and his counsel had guided King Lygdamis through many challenges. "My lady Artemisia," Myron greeted her, his voice a whisper that seemed to echo in the empty hall. "What troubles you, child of prophecy?" Artemisia stiffened. She didn't appreciate his cryptic way of speaking, nor the way he always seemed to see through her. "I am no child of prophecy, Myron," she replied curtly. "I am here to see my father." The seer chuckled softly, a sound that sent a shiver down her spine. "Oh, but you are wrong, my dear. Prophecy runs through your veins, as surely as the blood of kings. You cannot escape it, no more than you can escape the tide." Artemisia glared at him, her patience wearing thin. "I don't have time for riddles, Myron, if you'll excuse me." But before she could brush past him, his bony hand shot out and grasped her arm with surprising strength. His eyes, though clouded, seemed to pierce her very soul. "Listen to me, Artemisia," he whispered, his voice urgent. "There is a darkness in your future, a shadow that will follow you wherever you go. Someone close to you, someone you trust, will betray you. And when they do, it will change the course of your life forever." Artemisia felt a chill run through her. She wanted to dismiss his words as nonsense, the ramblings of an old man, but something in his tone made her hesitate. She pulled her arm free from his grasp, her heart pounding in her chest. "What do you mean?" she demanded, her voice shaking despite herself. "Who will betray me?" Myron shook his head slowly, a sad smile tugging at the corners of his lips. "That I cannot tell you. The future is always in motion, and the path is not yet clear. But mark my words, Artemisia, be wary of those closest to you. Trust no one blindly, for betrayal can come from the most unexpected places." With that, he released her, his eyes clouding over once more, as if he had already forgotten the conversation. Artemisia stood frozen in place, her mind racing with the implications of his prophecy. Could it be true? Could someone she trusted truly betray her? And if so, who? She didn't have time to dwell on it. She had come to the palace for a reason, and she wouldn't let Myron's cryptic warning distract her. She squared her shoulders and continued down the corridor, determined to confront her father once and for all. As she neared the throne room, her heart pounded with anticipation. She was ready for this conversation, ready to demand answers. But just as she reached the door, a sudden commotion erupted from within the palace. Guards rushed past her, their expressions tense. Servants whispered anxiously as they scurried about. Something was happening, something important. And then she heard it, the announcement that sent a shockwave through the palace. "Prince Xerxes has arrived." Artemisia's breath caught in her throat. Xerxes, the son of King Darius, heir to the Persian Empire. What was he doing here in Halicarnassus? Why had he come now of all times? The door to the throne room swung open, and there stood King Lygdamis, his expression unreadable as he faced the unexpected guest. Artemisia's mind raced with possibilities, but one thing was clear. Whatever was about to unfold, it would change everything. And as she stepped forward, ready to confront her father and face whatever fate had in store, she knew that the path ahead would be more treacherous than ever.